What's a civilization-ending scenario that most people aren't aware of?
A slow burn collapse is much more likely than a single major event to cause something major.
The best historical comparison is the fall of the Western Roman Empire. It didn't collapse all at once, but rather was very gradually divided into pieces and handed over to barbarian warlords in exchange for protection of Roman citizens on that land. When Rome was sacked by the Goths, it wasn't seen as that big of a deal at the time. People figured Rome was in a rough patch and would eventually bounce back. It wasn't until years later that people realized Rome wasn't coming back. The decline in quality of life for most people was huge, but since it happened really slowly, there was never an apocalypse moment. Instead, generations later things just generally began to feel post-apocalyptic. Much fewer people were literate, or bathing regularly, and generally people were more vulnerable to raiding tribes like Huns or Magyars or Mongols.
The change in Britain was abrupt enough that some of the writings from the sub-Roman and early Anglo-Saxon era do give you a bit of that post-apocalyptic vibe. I remember an account from that period talking about visiting a landowner whose home was originally Roman and still had a hypocaust, sophisticated system of underfloor heating, which was considered amazing and exotic. Of course, he couldn't afford to run it except on special occasions. Or the Old English poem The Ruin.
You're absolutely right, it's not going to be a single event. It'll be multiple systems failing at once, several minor crises converging like a rogue wave. Crop failure leads to political unrest while there happens to be a particularly incompetent leader in charge, which leads to war, which leads to a limited nuclear strike, meanwhile an earthquake strikes, and then there's a fuel shortage, after that a minor solar flare knocks out electrical systems for only a few days, but it's at a really inopportune time. It won't look like a world-ending event. It will be a gradual decline in living standards over years or generations. The Romans experienced a near civilization-ending crisis in the 3rd century due to multiple destabilizing events hitting around the same time: war, plague, inflation, political breakdown, famine. But it didn't happen overnight. It was slow. It took years for the system to collapse. It also took years and multiple leaders to diagnose and remedy the problems, but they did get there.
Corn virus. 20% of human civilization's calories right there.
As someone allergic to corn, I'm surprised it's only 20%. 90% of the grocery store is off limits.
20% of human calories, but likely makes up 100% of livestock diets. So would also collapse the livestock industry, which would further affect human diets.
Peak phosphorus. It's an important resource for production of fertilizer, and dwindling supplies could have a significant impact on global food security. Maybe an exaggeration to say that it would end civilization, but it could be a contributing factor to a cascade of problems that have a devastating impact on modern civilization.
Food shortages are usually self-correcting. If you understand what that means.
This is a wonderfully benign way of explaining something truly horrific.
The aliens finally coming back to harvest their livestock of humans.
I said it when The Matrix came out, and I'll say it again. Why wouldn't they just use regular livestock?
For the Matrix case, it can be argued that human brain output is larger than animals. Probably they could use dolphins as well, but nobody would watch movie about the dolphin Matrix, because bullets are slow in the water and Dolphin Neo would not be able to do his iconic move. As for the aliens harvesting livestock, it is just plain stupid, because of resource expenditure. Imagine how hard it is to get someone here on a transport ship, load livestock, and deliver it wherever. Even if we were all made of solid diamonds, or whatever those folks lack, with that level of technology they must be long past universal fabricator or some other way to produce resources locally. In fact, if we are talking about such scenario, it is much more likely that aliens will dismantle our star for metals.
As a kid, I learned that if a gamma ray burst is coming right at us, we really can't do anything about it. We just get fried. Kept me up for a few nights. If it's any consolation, if a GRB were to hit the Earth, we wouldn't really know until it did.
It would all be over in a matter of seconds if you're on the right side of the planet, and minutes at most on the non-facing side. The glass always half full over her.
Solar flare knocking out electric grids. Not only restarting them from a black start is highly complicated, if the transformers are fried, there aren't enough replacements. And to manufacture more we need, you guessed it, electricity. The estimations are that a solar flare on the level of Carrington event, which happened not 2 centuries ago, would cause trillions in damages and set back civilization for decades.
First, humanity would have to avoid plunging into anarchy. Then we would need to make rational decisions that benefit us as a whole, but everyone would have to sacrifice for it. That's a really long way of saying, we are doomed.
An intelligent species would understand this risk and make sure we have enough backup transformers to avert this risk, which is all but guaranteed to happen on a long enough time scale. Alas, we are led by people who value making as much money as possible in the short term and literally nothing else, so we somehow can't afford to make good decisions to save ourselves. Climate change called. Who dis phone?
I rarely see the media being concerned about water.
It won't end civilizations, but it may drive some countries to sever water stress and push less developed ones into failed state status. Large parts of the planet get most of their water from the water cycle. This is not going anywhere, though climate shifts will change the amounts in some locations. Edit. While some countries are already selling the water rights of underground well water to foreign corporations for money.
The possible breakdown of the Atlantic Gulf Stream edited to AMOC collapse. This basically keeps the air spinning and temperature regulated.
Prion, found in beef like mad cow's disease. There's literally never been a cure for this.
Wish this was higher up. There's no way to destroy them. Fire, acid, formaldehyde, bleach, nothing kills them. Medical equipment suspected of coming into contact with prion has to be destroyed. It can live in soil for over 2 years, worse than Ebola or AIDS or any another disease.
The disappearance of bees. Literally see any of the movies made about this. Shout out my boy Morgan Freeman and his 124-acre bee farm. The God Almighty will always protect us.
False vacuum decay. That our universe is not in fact in a stable state, but a metastable one where a transition from one to the other wipes the universe clean with zero ability to see it coming. Blink. Reality is gone on a universal scale. You thought you were important, or your family and city. Country even. The planet that you are familiar with, the moon and the night sky, the midday sun. The wider galaxy and our expanding electromagnetic shell telegraphing our location and history. Blink. Gone. Every star and every galaxy, every bit of space in between and beyond. All gone. Just like that. Flip.
Gamma ray burst. Supervolcano. Magnetic pole shift.
FYI, regarding the magnetic pole shift, everything that relies on compasses and GPS would no longer be functional during the shifting period. And that's crazy once you realize just how much is relied on satellites, from internet data to even the time on your phone. I don't know how long the shifting period would be, but until then, you could navigate only by what we could physically see or stars. After the shift, everything would be fine, though, hopefully.
Grey goo. A successfully created self-replicating nanobot that can consume biomass could trigger a chain reaction in which most of the planet is quickly consumed.
Big volcanic eruption. Winter for a couple of years. So very cold in winter and still snowing in summer. No food. Energy shortages. Massive refugee streams to less affected areas, etc. Not killing all humans, but certainly this civilization. Small but realistic chance.
For those who don't know, this is what people call nuclear winter. And you don't need nuclear weapons to cause it. You just need a lot of soot in the atmosphere, and a volcano is arguably more likely gonna cause this than nuclear explosions. Like any of the dozens of major eruptions we've had, just like in 1816.